checking in with Mike Williams from the LA Chargers, and you're tuned in to Chargers Unleashed.
Welcome to another edition of Chargers Unleashed. Jake Hefner and Dan Wolkenstein here with you from the LAFB Network. If this is your first time tuning in to the show, make sure to hit that like and subscribe button on YouTube. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Dan Wolkenstein. Today is not a show that we are talking about NFL free agency as it relates to the Chargers, because right now, with just under a month to go before the 2025 NFL Draft, that's what we're covering today, Dan. Taking a pause. Pause for effect. It's a beautiful sound. We're talking everything NFL Draft on today's show. And something that always ramps up during this part of the year, we get into the top 10 list when we really start breaking down the upcoming players of this NFL Draft. And Dan and I are starting off with a very key position that we have been talking about for weeks, if not months. We're breaking down the top 10 tight ends for the 2025 NFL Draft class. Now, Dan, before we get into the whole precedence that we have to set as it relates to this episode, I'm not going to do all the talking. First of all, how are you, sir? I know you're just as excited about this episode as I am, because there's a lot to get into, and hopefully it'll give some perspective for really how deep and talented this tight end class is. But let's hear it. Wolkenstein, what do you got?
I'm excited for this one. First position group rankings of the season for us for 2025 NFL Draft. And I really enjoy doing these. And it's maybe taking me a little bit longer to get into it this year because I've had a lot of stuff going on. But this was a fun process for me. And getting to this tight end group, I feel like it's a unique group in that the top two, I feel like everyone knows those top two. The next category is kind of all lumped together a bit. And then the third tier is kind of all lumped, and it could go anywhere. But for this Chargers team, and that's going to be the emphasis, for this Chargers team, there are a lot of options here that are enticing. And might I say, some value later in the draft in this class. But Jake, I'm excited for this one. First position group. I think Chargers fans are very eager to see what the Chargers do at this position. Jake, how are you?
I've been looking forward to this, Dan. This is really, since this is the first positional ranking that we get to do for this, it just reminds me that we're that much closer to the draft, because it's days like this where the days feel like weeks. Mm-hmm. Like having this episode now, it's March 28th. I felt like we should have been in the middle of April weeks ago. Like, it's that bad. And this happens every single year. And I keep trying to tell myself that, but I can never fully understand it or conform to it. I feel like the NFL draft should be tomorrow. I feel like we should have already done like 5 top 10 player rankings. And we're really getting into the thick of it as it relates to, okay, I think we've got a good idea as far as what the Chargers are going to do at 22, but we're not. We still have time. But that just means that we get plenty of time to go over lists like this. Now, precedence-wise that we have to set.
It's important.
This is important. And I'm going to make you all wait about 30 seconds while I talk about BetOnline, which is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything football. BetOnline is every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads to bet on during the games. You think you know your stuff? Get in our $200,000 mega contest and pick 5 games against the spread every single week for your chance at weekly prizes and share up to $200K. When the game is over, head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or on one with one of our 150 slot games. Head on over to the website today. That is betonline.ag. BetOnline, the game starts here. The precedence that needs to be set for this. I can predict that Dan and I's top 2 will be relatively the same.
Relatively.
3 and 4. We will probably have the same names. They may be in a different order.
For context, we have not seen each other's lists at all. Anything. We've purposefully waited.
Yes.
In fact, we were talking about this pre-show, like, hey, what are your top 10 so I could put on... We're like, no.
No, I don't want to know. Don't want to know. So 3 and 4, you may see the same names just in a different order. And once we get past that, from 5 to 10, it might be chaos, honestly. But what we want to remind everybody, and this is what Dan and I like to do when it comes to lists like this, and specifically for this tight end group, is that If we were talking about the best overall tight ends in this draft and just going through it for 32 NFL teams, this list would look very different. Very different. But currently, how the roster for the Chargers that has been constructed with what they currently have with Will Dissly, with Tucker Fisk, obviously bringing in Conklin as a free agent, it tailors this list a little bit in terms of what we believe that the Chargers are looking for. Dan and I's list is not going to be the same. I'm sure that any list that you guys would have, any of our listeners would have, is going to be completely different. So I'm sure that there will be some picks that Dan and I will probably get flamed for as it relates to, what? How the hell do you have this person ranked above this person? You are insane. Get off the pod. Go get a job.
Touch grass.
Yes. This is what's fun about these type of rankings, honestly. So please, we're going to have some fun during this episode. And by all means, put in the comments who your top 10 list is. Let's hear it. Let's create a fun football conversation. And let's break down the top 10 list of the 2025 tight end class. Dan, the only thing that we may have agreed to as far as talking about this list
And wearing hats.
Were, do we have some honorable mentions, yes or no? And I think that the answer was yes. We still just didn't know who they were. So Dan, if you would not mind, be the first and telling me who just came outside of your top 10 list.
So this was a fun exercise for me because, to Jake's point, this is not necessarily top 10 tight ends generally, but top 10 best fits for this Los Angeles Chargers team and its roster and its coaching staff and the philosophy and the holes and what this roster construction looks like moving forward. So who might be a top, 3, 4, 5 tight end for the NFL might not crack the top 10 for this Chargers team, or maybe barely squeak by. So again, remember that context as we go through. This top 10, Jake, was tough for me. And I think for me, the hard part was getting like the 8 to 12. You could flip a coin for me. And one day I'm out, one day I'm in on some of these guys. So honorable mentions, ones who I'm not going to be talking about as much, but I still really like a couple. Benjamin Rosick from Georgia. I like him. I think he's a pretty athletic, strong finisher, solid run blocker, ideal size, good at the catch point, some long strides. Did not make my top 10. The other one that might be a surprise, former ASU, now Texas Tech, going to be NFL soon, Jalen Conyers. Just missed my top 10. I have him just outside at 11, but liked him a lot. 6'4", 265, kind of a sleeper pick in my opinion. Highlight reel, though, if you go look at just his highlight reel, it's amongst the best. And I think the thing that kind of helps his case is he's a great blocker, 80.1 blocking grade on PFF. And also finishes. He rarely gets tackled by the first guy. So those are kind of the two guys that are just outside of my top 10. A couple of the guys, Luke Lachey outside, Josh Simons outside. I might take a flyer on CJ Dupree from Alabama. I'm not sure, but for the most part, that's my list.
Whew. Definitely some difference right out of the gate as it relates to who made your top 10 and who was just outside mine. I will start this off by saying from 9 to who I'm going to talk about as it relates to honorable mentions, I was down to the wire as it relates to finishing this list. That's how close I actually thought it was. And honestly, up until a half hour before we recorded this show, I was putting my bottom 3 in a different order again and again and again and again and again. And I was trying to figure out reasons why. So it is not any type of indictment on the player as far as how I have them ranked. They were literally this close to me, but this was just how I finished it. So I will say that as it relates to honorable mentions, I do agree with Dan as it relates to Joshua Simon. He was just outside of my top 10, but he was one of the guys as it relates to the combine that I thought really helped himself in just a good showing out, because you didn't have the Auroros or the Warrens or the Lovelands that performed that week, but he was one of the ones in a tight end group that a lot of people felt underperformed. He was one of the ones that actually looked pretty damn good as it relates to showcasing his athleticism. Now, Dan, this is where you're going to maybe get pissed off at me a little bit.
Oh, here we go. Okay.
But it's okay because I can get pissed off at you for one of the names that you said as well. So spoiler alert, but here we go. As hard as it was for me to keep this individual out of the top 10, and again, it really came down to last minute.
I'm getting nervous.
I had Orande Gadsden just outside of my top 10.
You are a maniacal madman.
I know. See, we already started this. And honestly, if you asked me like 30 minutes before the show, I had him in the top 10. Okay. I had him in that's how difficult this situation was for me. But holy shit.
Let's hold off on him. Let's hold off on him because he's on my list.
Okay. So I'll go ahead and talk about him when you bring him up. So in that case, I will go ahead and I will start with someone who was on your honorable mentions list that kicks off my top 10.
Ooh, okay.
And that is Texas Tech Jalen Conyers, excuse me. As you mentioned, transferred from Arizona State to Texas Tech, 30 passes for 320 yards, but his overall college production, Dan, was just absolutely insane. And you look at some of the things that he did. He was another one of the tight ends that I thought really showed out well in the combine, but he forced 33 missed tackles on 103 catches. That's ridiculous for a guy who comes in at 6'3" and weighs 260. He had deceptively good athleticism for what he was able to put forth, not only at the combine, but what he was able to do this year at Texas Tech. And like I mentioned, he's got plus athleticism and explosion for his size. At Texas Tech, they lined him out wide. They put him in the slot. They ran him out of the Wildcat where he had 2 rushing touchdowns. He even threw a touchdown on a trick play that they had as well. I just love what he's about, Dan. And he can block. He can block.
He's thick.
From some of the other tight ends that you're going to hear on this list, from this point to maybe 3 or 4 from now, the blocking is what really elevated Jalen Conyers, and just having that type of versatility along with the receiving skills, because his catch radius is fantastic. He's able to go up and get those 50-50 balls that you want. Like I mentioned, they can put him anywhere. And there's going to be a variety of these type of tight ends that you're going to see that are either wide receiver converts or that can be utilized that way. Conyers is one of those. And I just love the more I watch from Jalen Conyers. And you talk about a guy who not only, I think, elevated his draft stock during Shrine Bowl week and during the combine, I think he's going to be a valuable piece for any team that takes him.
Yeah, I don't disagree with any of that. And to put it in perspective, 6'3", 260. Then another guy we'll be talking about here soon, Harold Fannin, is 6'3", 230. So you got 30 pounds on him. So a little thick with 2 C's, if you know what I mean. Jake, before we get to our 6 through 10s, you already get 10. I will get to mine. Well, we have a friend of the show who called in and just so happens to be talking about a position that we're going over today at the end. Before he goes scorched earth on everyone else, including myself. Jake, I heard this, but you have not. Let's hear from our friend on the East Coast.
Oh, here we go.
Bob from Boston.
Boys, Bob from Boston calling. Hey, it's finally warming up on Cape Cod, and I'm in a good mood today, so I'm not going to make fun of Dan's long vacations around the world. He's the freaking Stanley Tucci of Chargers Unleashed, gallivanting around while Jake does all the heavy draft prep.
Whoa!
I didn't say a thing. I didn't contact Bob from Boston. It didn't take more than 10 seconds for Dan to just get completely obliterated.
How much did you get paid, Bob?
Holy
I need to know.
Shit.
And this freaking schedule you guys got, podcast is on Fridays, it's on Saturdays, it's on Mondays. It's like that old TV show Lost. I can't find the damn island. Keep it on one day.
He wants us to talk once a week. Sorry, Bob. My bad.
Shit. Anyway, my take on free agency. I'm worried that Horvitz has been sleeping through free agency like Rip Van Winkle. But the more I think about this, the more I see short-term money, short-term commitments for character guys, and building up the middle class of the roster. The Patriots used to do that, and it worked, but they had Brady. I'm hoping Horvitz got another move with all that extra cap space, and I'll be okay if he makes one. You don't win free agency, so I'm okay with no crazy money signing, but there's got to be another jockstrap to drop. Now, I got a sleeper for you guys. I always believe that Scott Pioli built the Patriots dynasty, and I read him a lot. He's big on Nathaniel Salmon, 6'6", 245 tight end from New Zealand, who's at the International Combine. Not a lot of football experience, but Pioli thinks this Kiwi is really athletic and has plus skills and hand-eye coordination. He's the same size and played basketball like Tony Gonzalez. I've read some good stuff from New Zealand on him. I say maybe take a late-round flyer on this guy. He could be a sleeper. I think poor Dan needs some time away. He should stop at a Packy, get some brews, hop on a plane, and check out Salmon. Listen, that's it for now. I'm looking forward to the draft. Chargers unleashed, baby.
It's always a treat when Bob for Boston comes in. Dan, correct me if I'm wrong. Was he meaning to say Hortiz? I heard him saying Horvis.
I think it might be the thick accent.
Shit.
Unable to say Hortiz. Bob, it's Hortiz. Bob, it's Hortiz.
I mean, I was just listening to that. I heard it not once, but twice. And I'm like, was that the accent? Or was I just really hearing that it was
He's
horrible?
trying.
Okay. But I know who
Bob.
he's talking about. Again, always a treat when Bob from Boston calls a show and literally flames Dan 3 times in the same message. It's always great for that. So, good precedence.
Good thing I don't do any work.
Good first step to set on this particular show. Awesome.
Nathaniel Salmon, Jake. I had the luxury of hearing this voicemail beforehand, so I got a chance to look up real quick. There is 0 highlights of him at tight end because he only played basketball. But Chargers fans know a thing or two about basketball converts.
Yes, they
that
do.
Go undrafted,
Yes,
i.e.
they do.
Antonio Gates, Hall of Famer. He has the size, has the traits. Again, you're just going off of physicality and traits and upside. But again, he's only 20 years old, hasn't played football, but basketball savant, at least at 17 is when he started. But you heard it here first, Jake, and Chargers fans. Nathaniel Salmon could be a sleeper on the international program. Okay, Jake, without further ado, let's get into it. So,
Your top 10.
Why don't we do
number 10?
Why don't we say our 6 through 10s, starting at 10, and then we'll kind of go through as we go. Okay. So for me, if I look at my top 10, I'm gonna start with 10 and go down to 6. Number 10, I've got the tight end from Texas, Gunnar Helm, which might be a hot take. I apologize. Number 9, I've got Jake Briningstool from Clemson. Number 8, I've got Harold Fannin Jr. from Bowling Green. Please keep the pitchforks to yourself. Number 7, I've got Orande Gadsden, the Syracuse tight end. And number 6, the big man himself, Mitchell Evans from Notre Dame. Now, Jake, before we get your reactions to those, let's get your 10 through 6.
So number 10, as I had just spoken about, Jalen Conyers out of Texas Tech. Number 9 is where I placed Jake Briningstool out of Clemson. Number 8, I had Mitchell Evans just above that. Number 7, Harold Fannin. And to round it out, I had Gunnar Helm at number 6.
Woo! Okay, so Gunnar Helm is probably the one that we are the furthest apart from each other. I have him at 10. You have him at 6.
So let's go ahead and start there with Gunnar Helm. Let's hear it. Since he's number 10 on your list, if the pitchforks haven't come out already for you, let's hear why.
All right. And I know people are not going to like this. Let's, again, establish the precedent. This is best fit for the Chargers. And you look at this coaching staff and you look at what they prioritize and you look at the things that are important to them, right? We talk about availability. We talk about production. We talk about show me what you've done in the past. And then we talk about things like blocking, right? This thing is really, really important for this Chargers team. for me, looking at these top 10s, like you have to find somebody, in my opinion, like they've got to have something that is very, very, very good, if not elite, as a trait. And when I look at Gunnar Helm, personally, while he might be a complete tight end, like to me, for the most part, he's pretty average to above average at everything. And that might not necessarily be a bad thing, but I don't think that fits for what this Chargers team needs. Like this Chargers team, in my opinion, does not need someone who's just pretty good at a lot of stuff or good at a lot of stuff. Like they need someone who can be athletic, incredible at the catch point, downfield. They could be a yak monster, size. Like that's what they need, right? Look at the roster as it stands currently. And Gunnar Helm to me just isn't that. Like nothing's really incredibly flashy. He's got a little bit of wiggle to his route running, but nothing crazy over athletic. Like he's got pretty good hands, I guess. And this might be a hot take. I don't know. He kind of reminds me of like a Will Dissly athleticism, right? You saw that last year, but better after the catch. And so for me, again, he's in the top 10, but there just wasn't anything that really stuck out to me for Gunnar Helm. And also like kind of a breakout year, 1 year, not proven production. Number 10.
All right. Let's continue that. As you mentioned, breakout year in 2024, 60 catches for 764. He still has ideal size for the position, Dan. And he's versatile when taking snaps in the slot or out wide. You watch his film and he's able to track the ball well down the field. He can make some of those tough catches that you want to see. See the game against Georgia for that. As you mentioned, 1 year starter. So I totally understand just from a continuity standpoint from year to year, you'd like to see a little bit more in that. Isn't the smoothest in his route running, doesn't have the most diverse route tree. So there are some things for him to improve at the next level. But he just seems like a Jim Harbaugh type of tight end to me. I wouldn't go as far as to make the comparisons to Will Dissly in that circumstance. I understand from, if you're just viewing this from plus athleticism, you can say that. But
he's not the blocker of Will Dissly. Like I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying purely as a pass catcher, he reminds me of Will Dissly.
Sure. I know everybody wants to go to what happened to him at the combine. I actually give him more points for that, given the fact that the first drill that he did, he sprains his ankle and still goes out and runs 240s and still goes out and does all the positional drills for the day. And we all saw the picture. That ankle was rolled. I still believe that he's just going to be the type of tight end that you want to have as your football team. He could be a reliable safety blanket to a quarterback for sure. And he can be that move tight end that you want as part of this team. And honestly, if we're to go off of what we know from the Chargers, that yes, in terms of how we're going to style this list, blocking isn't as big of tight ends that we're looking for in this class, considering the fact that they have Will Dissly, they have Tucker Fisk. And when you look at the Conklin acquisition, you need more of a move tight end in general. And Gunnar Helm can be that. And just as far as his work ethic and his play style goes, hard-nosed type of football player, I think he could be exactly what Jim Harbaugh would like in this offense, honestly. I get your reasons for having him at 10. I don't fault you for that, even though other people might. But I'm curious as this list goes on to hear the reasonings of the elevation for certain other players above Gunnar Helm, because that is definitely a different position that we have seen Gunnar Helm in previously on most people's top tight ends. But I'm sure that there are some of the people that are out there that maybe share your sentiment, Dan.
For sure. Again, he's pretty good at a lot of things, but he's not really great at anything. You look at receiving grade, 72.4. Like that's pretty good. Yards per route run, that's good at 1.61. Not great. That's kind of honestly sort of average. 3.2% drop rate, right at the same thing. Average to maybe above average. Contested catch rate, 50%. Run block grade, 43.5. Not great. You know, he had a credible production this past year. I'll give him that. 7 touchdowns, 13.1 yards per reception, 786 yards. But what happened the year before? He barely cracked 190 yards and 2 touchdowns. So I'm not saying he's bad, but again, there isn't that elite trait that I think this Chargers team needs to improve its tight end room. I don't think Gunnar Helm is any better than what they have currently at anything, if I'm being honest. Okay, we can go a little shorter on the 6 through 10. I know 5 through 1 is going to get insane.
Did you have Briningstool at 9?
I have, let's see, let me go check mine. Mine is, yes, Briningstool is number 9.
Then we both are in agreement for the first time on this show. So let's talk about Jake Briningstool, number 9 for both you and I as it relates to this tight end rankings. He's got definitely the size that you want as it relates to a tight end coming in at 6'6", but still has a slender build. I mean, he carries his weight actually pretty well, but he's built more like a wide receiver. And especially for the ways that they would deploy him at times at Clemson, having him out wide, just in some ways that they would have him run in the offense, it was built more like a wide receiver. But where he's knocked a little bit is just from the standpoint that he needs a little bit more work with his route tree. He doesn't have the best production when it comes to yards after the catch, but still put up pretty good numbers over a 3-year period. 127 receptions, 1,380 yards, and 17 touchdowns in his college career. And Dan, just in terms of a plus athleticism from a tight end, I think that if you can get him to put on a little bit more size, and B, if you can have him perfect his game a little bit more at the next level, he may look like a tight end 3 coming in to some as it relates to development. May take some time to craft some of that raw ability that he has.
I definitely have the fundamentals need to improve. For sure.
Yes. But if you put all that together, you got something. I see a lot of the traditional Donald Parham, Stone Smart type of, that type of size, carrying that much weight, not a blocking tight end whatsoever, but has the ability to separate and be utilized more like an extra wide receiver out there on the field. That's what I see from Jake Briningstool. And again, as I'm saying this and I'm going through the 9, 10, and honorable mentions, I'm still, even in my head right now, having delusions of grandeur to say, should I have re-ranked this differently? And it's because, again, it's this razor close as it relates to the tight ends in the bottom of my ranking. But there's a lot to like about Briningstool. And I think that coaches are going to like his mentality and what he brings to the game. Is he going to take a little bit more time to develop than some? Yes, I think so. But if you're able to craft that, put it together, and put it on a coaching staff that is able to build something like that into a good, reliable weapon, Briningstool can be a steal for someone, 100%.
Yeah, and so this is where this gets back to for the Chargers, top 10 and best fit. And so, for example, all of those statistics about whether it's contested catch or whether it's yard per route run or whether it's, statistics over the course of his career, I wouldn't say he's better than Gunnar Helm at those. But what I do think he is better at than Gunnar Helm is I think he is a better athlete. I think he is a bigger weapon. I think he's better as a catcher. I think he's shown more consistency over his career at Clemson over 3 years. And you look at kind of the way his style of play matches what this Chargers team needs, right? Big, solid, deep ball target. Yes, he could use more route running fundamentals, but really, really good hands. Small hands, but good hands. He's a big play tight end, but plays more like a slot receiver. 60% of his snaps were in the slot versus in line. So this is a solid target for the outside. I really like him. Again, am I saying he's a day 2, day 1 guy? No. He's probably early, mid, day 3 for me. But I think the potential and upside to me rises him above someone like I had in honorable mentions. I think he has this. I think he has the size, the traits, what this Chargers team needs. Comes from a big school, comes from a production machine at Clemson, and has the traits that you can see translate to the NFL in this offense. So I think this Chargers team, given what it currently has, I think every Chargers fans would agree with me. They need pass catching, offensive weapons. They need juice, right? And I think this kid has a chance to give them juice.
Yep.
At number 9.
I agree.
Number 8 for me, Jake. And I think this is where we might start getting a little chippy here.
Wild.
Number 8 for me is Harold Fannin. And real quick, where do you have him?
I had Harold Fannin at 7. So we're not too far
Okay.
apart as it relates to the rankings.
But I bet you Chargers fans or just fans in general have him a lot higher than 7 or 8 on their big boards. And I want to be clear about this. You can't knock Harold Fannin's production.
As long as you got that out of the way.
The guy is an absolute machine, and he's like breaking records seemingly every day. He had 14 missed tackles forced, number 1 in all of college football at the tight end position. His yards per route run was like an insane 3.77. Like, that's off the charts great. Receiving grade, 96.4. Like, incredible, right? He had, 117 receptions, 1,500 yards, all records for the tight end position. Versatile chess piece, can play in line. So this is where it gets tough. I remember I texted you after I was kind of going through my eval of Harold Fannin, just like, I don't know what to do with this archetype. He kind of reminds me of like a Gerald Everett, maybe a better Gerald Everett, which again, like, that's not bad by any means. But I look at what I think an NFL team needs to do with this kind of player and what this Chargers team roster currently looks like. And I just don't see those two things matching. I don't see a Greg Roman offense with Najee Harris, Justin Herbert, and Ladd McConkey drafting this guy high enough to where they're going to use him as a focal point of their offense over any of those 3 guys. Furthermore, I think he's a little small. What he did production-wise, while you can't take anything away from him, I don't know if 6'3", 230 is going to do the same thing as it did in college in the NFL. That's a hard job to do in line, for example. He's a little undersized, but he's physical. Again, he's kind of a Gerald Everett. Great out of the screen game. Again, like, I think for me, it's purely off of the fit. I just don't know if Harold Fannin fits what this Chargers team is looking to do. He would bring juice, but in a way that I think has to be manufactured. And I don't think he can kind of do it on his own as a slot guy, as an outside guy. While he played a lot of outside in college, I don't think that part translates in the NFL. So I think the specificity and the focus that an offense would have to utilize his traits, I just don't see Harbaugh and company doing that, which is why I have him probably lower than the consensus, again, for the Chargers.
Overall, as this evaluation process has taken place here over the last few months, I will admit that Harold Fannin a few months ago may have been higher on my list. Maybe even considerably.
If you just watch him and say, like, how good was this kid in college? I mean, put him up with any of them.
As Dan started with, you can't ignore the production because there was reasons that records were broken at Bowling Green this year from Harold Fannin. There is no tight end in this class that had better overall receiving production than Harold Fannin Jr. First in missed tackles, 34. Second in deep catches with 9. Third in deep yards with 333. And fourth in contested catches with 12. Now, people got a little miffed during the testing because they weren't too impressed. It was part of the overall impression of that tight end group that was out there at Indy and how they tested, because he's not the fastest off the line. He's not the most explosive. But it's when he gets into open space that he is able to turn on the juice. So he has the long speed that you want from a receiving threat. And that is just all over his tape.
Yeah, just 4.7, 140. But
yes,
long juice is what you're talking about. Like, I think,
correct.
For someone, in my opinion, like, and I'll give you back the floor, but for someone who is undersized or someone who, like, they have to have elite stuff, right? They got to have elite physicality, elite athleticism, elite speed, elite, whatever it is. And to me, he doesn't have that. He has elite production, But in order for you to make it in the NFL with that, you look at, again, different position, but look at like a Brock Bowers, right? Undersized, but that dude is a unicorn, right? You look at Tank Dell, one of my favorites, the wide receiver position, very undersized, but his separation is out of this world. I don't know what Harold Fannin's out of this world thing is that isn't tied to production.
Still hit 21 miles an hour, Dan, at the end of that run.
Totally.
He may not have the best start and explosion off the line, but like I was mentioning, it's his long speed and his ability to separate as a receiving threat is what really makes him stand out. On top of that, he's got great hands. He's got the versatility to play both inside and out. It's a little bit of your reservations for it and where you have him ranked, I agree with. I do believe that you have to put him in a system where you're going to play to his strengths. I will say that. I do not knock his ability at the next level. I think for any team that ends up selecting him that is smart and has watched his tape and is going to accentuate the things that make him who he is, they're going to get a hell of a receiving tight end. I truly believe that. And as it relates to the Chargers, for everything that we've been talking about, and especially for a name that you'll have here on in just a couple of minutes, in Gadsden, same type of aspects apply in terms of a receiving threat. Gadsden may not have the production Fannin does, but the similarities and the traits are there. And so you put the production along with the traits and with a coaching staff that knows how to utilize it and play to your strengths. That's why I have Fannin a little bit higher up.
Yeah, I mean, again, like he's for his size, right? There's always that disclaimer. For his size, 75.2 run blocking grade, pretty darn good. I mean, for production, again, we talked about the broken record in 2024, but the dude had almost 2,200 yards over the past 2 seasons. He's had 16 touchdowns over the past 2 seasons. I mean, target-wise, he had 150 targets this year. That's almost triple what he had last year.
Insane.
Absolutely insane. 117 catches, which is just wild. So, again, I like him a lot. And if it was a different coaching staff with a different roster, he'd be way higher on my board. But you look at the types of guys that Chargers brass seem to get, right? Look at the Joe Alts of the world. Look at the Lad McConkeys. Look at the traits guys, right? Massive or elite. And I don't think he has that. I don't. So we'll see. We'll see. I could be completely wrong. Maybe they go a completely different direction. And Jake, you and I could be pegged as an idiot, which wouldn't be the first time. Who do you have at number 9 for you? Oh, number 8 for you. Excuse me.
And I think this is where you and I had another flip-flop because you had Evans, I believe, at 7.
Okay. Yes. I have Gadsden at 7.
You have Gadsden at 7. All right, let's hear it from Gadsden because then I would love to chime in on this because I think he's another fantastic tight end in this class. But by all means, let's hear it.
So I really, really like this kid. And the more I watched him, the more I kind of got behind, I can see this play.
I get why.
I can see this translate to this Chargers team. For context, I have him as like an early day 3 guy, in my opinion. First off, right off the bat, love the size. 6'6", 245. Plays more of that like wide receiver position than he does a tight end. Don't expect much from a blocking point of view. Like I'm not even remotely looking at that for him. Although he kind of does grade out better than most in this class. Just saying. Production, incredible. 3rd team AP All-American, 1st team All-ACC. Set a school record at Syracuse with 73 receptions for almost 940 yards and 7 touchdowns. Started all 13 games and posted 10-plus receiving yards 5 times this past year. We talk about availability. We talk about consistency. We talk about show me what you've done. Previous success is the best predictor of current success. 10.3 ADOT, by the way. Incredible. Look at kind of where he's playing the most. 2nd most receptions out of the slot among all tight ends for 583 yards. 1st in FBS. Love the fact he has a long frame. Great contested catcher. I think he has like a 60-point-something contested catch rate. And that's not a big sample size. I think it's 17 of 28 on contested catches. So 28, which that's way more than most of the guys that we're talking about here. Huge sample size compared to others. Like that's big. again, talking traits, big dude down the field, can provide some juice for Justin Herbert, get him somebody that can be open, can throw in tight windows. That's the type of archetype that this Chargers team looks to be looking for. You look at kind of what they looked at in Evan Ingram, right? Look at that size. You look at a Colston Loveland with this Michigan team previously with Harbaugh and company, had homegrown. That's what they're missing. Like, they need that kind of guy. And as a tier 3 version of the tier 1 guys, sign me up for Gadsden. And I know a lot of people are probably lower on him. The stat that I think that is most important, arguably, are his hands. Again, we talked about he converted from wide receiver to tight end. 103 targets this past season, Jake. Just 3 drops. 3. You will take that with that much usage. I like him a lot. I'm higher on him than most. I'm okay with it. I'll go to war with it.
And I understand why. And like I had said previously, that literally before this show, I was juggling back and forth, and I had Gadsden in my top 10, and then I didn't, and went back and forth. And it was a very, very tough decision to make. But when you talk about the traits that are there for him as a receiving tight end, you just love what you watch. As Dan mentioned, wide receiver to tight end convert, and his play shows for it. And he had a very nice comeback after losing the 2023 season to injury. Mm-hmm. Dan rattled off already all the stats that mentioned the 5 games of 100 yards receiving on the season, which was fantastic. And he had one of the best catches of the year against Boston College, if you go back and you watch that game. Great with contested catches. Again, much like Harold Finn, he's not the most explosive off the snap or is going to have any big breaks and can struggle when going up against press coverage. Route tree still needs a little bit of work. It's very vanilla as it relates to what it is that he can run. But in general, despite his slender type for coming in as a tight end, again, wide receiver convert, that's just who he is. He's going to be a great receiving threat because you add 5 to 10 more pounds to his build, and just knowing what he is capable of as a receiving threat, given all those traits, and some better than others as it relates to tight ends that Dan may have ranked below. It makes perfect sense on why people would look at him as a great option. And I think he's actually going to go a little bit higher than where people have them projected. Dan said
some people say he's like a UDFA possibility. I'm like,
I personally don't think that he's going to go that far. I think you can't. I think coaches are going to be enamored with some of the athletic abilities and traits that he's got, and they're going to take a swing on him. And it may surprise you where he ends up going. And I think based off of his pro day and what he did at, just during the evaluation process in general, but he just had his pro day just a few days ago and tested very, very well. On top of that, when you look at the production and his traits, you're going to put all that together, and some coaches are going to say, I want to work with that.
Yeah, again, a couple more stats here, Jake. Look at 2023 season, obviously was taken out due to injury, but go back to 2022, the guy almost had 970 yards and 6 touchdowns. Then go to 2024, this past season, 934 yards, 7 touchdowns. Like, the guy is consistent when he's on the field. 82.6 receiving grade, pretty damn good. 1.89 yards per route run, pretty darn good. 60.7 contested catch rate, pretty damn good. And I know people are going to flame him for his run blocking grade, but it's not terrible. I think if he added maybe 5-10 pounds, he might be a little bit better. But I don't think it's as bad as people are saying. And so for me, I like him a lot. And I think that's one where I could see this Chargers team going after somebody like this, which is why I have him ranked where I do. Next up, Jake, we're flying through here now.
Dan, I had Mitchell Evans at number 8 for me out of Notre Dame. And we were talking about, coming back off of injury, have a good season. Same thing for Mitchell Evans, because he came back after tearing his ACL, his MCL in 2023. And there was a little bit of a lull, if you go back and you watch the season, that took him some time to really ramp up as it relates to getting back in the swing of things, getting that production up. But the back half of the year and in the playoffs, he returned to form, and he was a vital piece of Notre Dame's offense. But he's just such a big-bodied guy. He looks to me like an offensive lineman that just turned tight end, that somehow figured out how to move and beat defenders and just lost 100 pounds and is able to just go out there and do the things that he does. And because of that big body, he can box out defenders in order to get open. And truthfully, if he hadn't suffered that knee injury, we'd probably be talking about him a lot higher on this list.
Where do you have him at again? Where is he?
I have him at 8, just below Harold Fannin Jr.
I have him at 6 on mine.
But he's kind of in the same category in terms of how I think that Harbaugh and Roman are gonna look at just their tight ends, to say, kind of similar to what I was talking about with Gunnar Helm in terms of lunch pail guy, hard-nosed worker.
Here we go.
Gonna put his nose to the grind. Again, it's not the blocking. It's still the receiving, because for Mitchell Evans, as being a big body guy, still has great hands. Still can put up the production if you need it. I think he's going to be fantastic at the next level. But to me, that spells a Greg Roman and a Jim Harbaugh tight end. When you go back and you watch his film from Notre Dame, you're like, yeah, this could be that guy.
Yeah, you just start watching him. You're like, yep, that passes the eye test. That looks like an NFL tight end, right? Like, you think of just prototypical. He's got the 6'5", 260 can maul people physically. A mismatch, right? He can win with just sheer size and strength, more so than athleticism, in my opinion, because he's probably an average athlete, but like, he looks the part. Strong hands, in my opinion. Contested catch monster, by the way, Jake. 72.7% contested catch. And you talk about like just what looks like, you said this, he just oozes Harbaugh guy, in my opinion. Like, you look at just his physical traits, you look at the style of play that he has, and just imposing his will on opposing teams. This looks like a Harbaugh guy. And so while some of the production might not be what you'd like to see, this is one of those, give me the guy who can look like the rest of them, who can line up in line and not be, a very, very small carrot in the very, very high trees, right? You're talking about Joe Alt, Mekhi Becton at this point, right? Put him in line. You're not really that far off at size. I mean, that is a freaking wall if you brought him there. So you just look at that type of physical presence that he brings. I think there's something there. And it might not be the flashy selection at tight end that brings like that big juice, athleticism, and production, but I have him higher for me because of the style in which he plays. And his style aligns so much with what Harbaugh and Roman represent. Not the greatest blocker, but has the traits, in my opinion, that I think they would fall in love with.
Does that round out your 10 through 6?
Yeah,
because I know we've gone through mine: Conyers, Briningstool, Evans, Fannin Jr., and Gunnar Helm. Is it correct?
So 9 I have. So 10 was Gunnar Helm. Briningstool was 9. 8 was Harold Fannin. 7 Orande Gadsden, and 6 was Mitchell Evans. So I'm through my 6 through 10.
We are officially now in the top 5. If pitchforks have already not been brought out already, we're hoping that we'll be able to put a smile on your face here for the next 5 of our top 10 rankings.
Okay, so Jake, I think we all know the top 2 are the same.
Yes.
Right? Number 1 and 2, we have Orande Loveland.
That's right.
Okay. Here we go. Number 5 for me, Jake. I'm a little nervous now saying this. Number 5, I've got Elijah Arroyo from Miami. Please let me talk before Chargers fans don't blame me yet. 4, I've got Terrance Ferguson out of Oregon. And 3, I've got Mason Taylor. So 3, 4, 5. What are yours?
It's actually not too different, Dan.
Ooh.
Because I had Terrance Ferguson at 5, Arroyo at 4, and Mason Taylor at 3.
All right, so we just have flip-flopped Arroyo and Ferguson. Otherwise, we're in the same boat.
Yes.
Look at us. Honestly, when I saw Arroyo at 5, I was like, oh no, Jake's going to have it at like 2 or 3, and I'm going to be absolutely torched. Woo! Okay, Jake, let's start off with then Your 5 was Ferguson?
I had Ferguson. I may get. You wanted to talk about it. You wanted me to give you an opportunity to talk about why Arroyo was at 5 for you. Go for it.
Oh boy. Okay. I know folks are enamored with Elijah Arroyo, and I understand why. Like, I get the if you're just a scout and you just look at that guy and you're like, of the 8 plays that I watched, right, that guy has it. He seems like he has what it takes for this Chargers team, and he aligns with a lot of the stuff that this Chargers team needs, right? He's athletic. The guy's a freak athlete, in my opinion. I think that for a big issue for me was injury, but the guy is just a pure pass catcher. He's got just 1 drop this past season. Now, given only 47 targets, but still very good. 16.9 yards per reception, which is incredible. Second in the nation with anyone over 25 targets at the tight end position. His ADOT, 11.1, absolutely filthy. Like, incredible. For me, though, you're drafting him based on traits and potential versus proven production and consistency. Again, he came on the scene like crazy in 2024. And I say like crazy, I mean, like, his traits and the things you see, you're like, oh, where'd this guy come from? 6'4", 245, like athleticism out the charts. Not the greatest at contested catches, but he looks the part. And the part for me that is a concern for him, it's not just that he got injured, but it's that he's gotten injured like it's a pattern. And with Justin Herbert and everyone, you talk about like and I don't want to call it like, oh, he's weak because he had to be out for injury. But you look at some of the guys that are able to just like play through injuries, and everyone gets nicked up, but just play through, or just they have the luck where they don't have bad injuries. Elijah Arroyo has been hurt, and that's kind of a red flag. And comparisons from him to like a Ladd McConkey. Ladd McConkey, while he had injury concern, he also produced like crazy, right? Elijah Arroyo, I don't think has the pedigree that this Chargers team would look for and be like, you know what, I'll take a risk regardless. And so for me, that looking at what you've done for me lately and previous success is the best predictor of future success. 1 out of 3 seasons is kind of tough for me to go after a guy who's probably going to have to get picked pretty darn high in this draft for you to get him. I really like Elijah Arroyo. I love what he brings. I just don't think this Chargers team is going to go out and take a risk on someone that has kind of been, it's been a risk one. It's been a risk. Is that too crazy?
It's not wild. I think that's the biggest question that Elijah Arroyo has to answer to 32 teams that are interested in him. Medicals are a huge, huge issues for him, as you mentioned, because you had 2 full seasons where injuries cut his season short.
Literally, 2022, 2023 combined, 6 receptions on 8 targets for 77 yards. So you're banking on 1 season.
Right, but we've talked about other guys in this list that are coming off of 2023 injuries and had a productive 2024.
But also had a productive 2022, though.
Which I get. But I think it's the other aspects and the intangibles that you normally don't find in a tight end that Elijah Arroyo has that make him worthy of a high round selection in this case.
Totally get it.
Terrific athleticism for the tight end position. Absolutely ridiculous. And similar to Harold Fannin, Elijah Arroyo had the most overall downfield production out of any tight end in this entire class. 8 deep catches, 255 yards on deep receptions, and 16.9 yards per reception. That's ridiculous for tight end production. And the final 3 games of the year, when he really turned it on, it was 14 receptions for 205 yards and 2 touchdowns. He really turned it on in the final part of the year. I just think, Dan, that there is, yes, you have to answer the questions about the medical as it relates to Elijah Arroyo. But if you're looking for that difference maker that comes in a different shape or form as it relates to tight end, something that's going to essentially be a combination of the new age plus the old age of the tight end in a certain respect. To me, that's Elijah Arroyo, because he's just built differently. Now, can he sustain it? Can he stay healthy? That is a big question. And honestly, when we were creating this list, I did have him higher. And that was a reason that he didn't get knocked down below others for me in this list.
There every day.
But if you're looking for an ability to give Justin Herbert a receiving threat at tight end, there is no question to me that the Chargers should consider him if it comes down to it for a tight end option for Justin Herbert. If we're talking day 2, and that is indeed the play. Can you imagine, just for a second, if you're talking about a healthy Elijah Arroyo?
That's a big if, though.
I know that that's a big if, and I'm not saying that those questions don't have to be answered.
If they had a healthy Jason Barrett.
Sure,
Imagine
okay,
if they had a healthy...
Yeah, see, now Wolkenstein has me,
Jake's hypotheticals.
Yeah, or hypocriticals, or however we want to say it. But I get it. But you think about that potential. You try not to, put any bad hex on anybody out there. But we're not talking about an injury this year. We're talking about coming off of injuries a year ago, 2 years ago, and had a very, very productive 2024. You take that with the athletic traits. That's something that any team is going to bank on for him when he is a receiving threat of that nature.
Any team that's going to reach to draft him will. And I think there will be teams that will have him way higher on their board and will go after him higher than I think the Chargers will. Do I think the Chargers would say no to him? Of course not. But do I think this Chargers team will reach as high as they would need to go in order for them to go get him? I don't think so. I don't think this Chargers team and this coaching staff and front office are the mindset of caution to the wind. We're going to go with the athlete because that's what's best for Justin Herbert. And who cares if he's not going to be there or hasn't shown that he can be there every day? We're just going to get the guy who has the traits. That just doesn't seem like this regime. And so, again, I've had to shift my focus a lot over the last year and a half of what would I do versus what would this Chargers staff do now versus what I would do, what this Chargers staff would have done previously. And so while we might not value the same things or all of the same things, there's a lot of traits I understand. All right, I get it. The same reason why they went Najee Harris over J.K. Dobbins, at least right now. It still both might be there. But Najee Harris, right? Production, consistency, availability, those are very high for this Chargers team. I don't think you can say 2 of those 3 things for Elijah Arroyo. That's why I have him where I have him.
Understood. Now, honestly, Dan, 4 and 5 between Arroyo and Ferguson, much like the bottom half of my tight end group, I was flip-flopping for a period of time. Honestly, this was tough because I love Terrance Ferguson.
Yeah.
Great evaluation during All-Star games, had a great combine. He was one of the big ones that stood out during that testing period. Big body, athletic profile, nice footwork, able to get big chunk plays on short dump off passes. When they put him in the screen game or on crossing routes, he was able to get open and get big chunk plays for yardage.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like we mentioned, Yak was one of the biggest improvements in his game from one year to the next because he was tied for 5th among tight ends in overall Yak production. Now, still needs development in his skill set. Not the best when it comes to downfield blocking or contested catch situations, but coaches that watched his tape and know his game, they're going to love what they have in Terrance Ferguson. And he's going to turn out to be a versatile, valuable weapon for any offense.
I really like Terrance Ferguson. I think I'm higher on him than most. I have him at 4. Would you have him as?
I had him at 5.
Okay.
But honestly, you ask me tomorrow, it may switch.
Yeah, to me, he's probably a late day 2. But you look at some of the measurables, right? 6'5", 247, fits the part. 4.63 40 time for somebody that size, that's insane. 39-inch vertical for a 6'5" athlete. You want to talk about go up and get it? Throw it 9 feet in the air. Who else can get it? Right? That's what we're talking about here. Big body, fluid athlete. And for someone who is that big, he sheds tackles so easily. And excellent after the catch. 15.8 yards per reception. Number 1 in the class. And you mentioned it. Incredible at the screen game. 9 yards after catch per reception. 9 yards after the catch per reception. Highest in the class. 40% of his snaps were in line. So it wasn't like he was only playing out wide or in slot. Like he was playing in line a bit. To me, he kind of has, and I'm not saying he is the top end of Travis Kelce, but he has that play style of Travis Kelce. Excellent in space. I love his mindset. Definitely brings this Chargers team a bunch of juice. Smooth strides. They use him in motion all the time at Oregon, which I think is similar to how Travis Kelce's used, where he's just a mismatch. Get him in space, allow you to, manufacture touches for him. Good. Now, the interesting thing, and I don't know if this is necessarily a bad thing if you're using him correctly, but contested catch, not great. You mentioned it. 25% contested catch rate percentage this past year. Like, not good. Not good. But get him open. Don't got to worry about it.
But doesn't that seem just like something that the Chargers are going to do in an offense that they've built?
Yes. So now we're getting to, like, for the Chargers. First team all Pac-12. Right? 2.02 yards per route run. That's damn good. Played in all 14 games 2023. First team all Pac-12, played in 14 games. Set school records at Oregon. Career reception and receiving touchdowns, 16 receiving touchdowns by a tight end, 134 receptions. I really, really like Terrance Ferguson. 6'5", 255, just 22 years old. He's got that look of that's what this Chargers team needs. Get him in space. He's fluid, got the size. He's a physical mismatch, can own the middle of the field. Hard to bring down. Like, that's the juice. That's the offensive weapon that you want to see this Chargers team bring in. So I'm higher on him than most. A little higher than you, but probably higher than most.
Smidge.
Next up, Jake, who do you got? I think we've gone through 5 and 4, right?
We've gone through 5 and 4. We've got the same 1, 2, 3.
Okay.
And I know that we're going to be talking about everybody's favorite as it relates to possibilities for the Chargers at 22 here in just a minute. But may I interest you all in a consolation prize of a Mr. Mason Taylor.
Yes,
out of LSU.
Please.
Oh my goodness. I have enjoyed watching Mason Taylor so much through this eval process. First of all, he's coming off of a tremendous pro day that he tested at. The combine was just as good. My favorite was when Mason Taylor was running through the gauntlet drills and TJ's like, can't even see the white line because he literally just painted on top of it. It was that good. When you talk about just precision for a guy for tight end, that is who Mason Taylor is. And arguably may have the best hands of any tight end in this entire draft class.
Ooh.
Very smooth in his route running. Great hands, only had one drop pass in 2024. Big body, big catch radius, able to go up and make difficult contested catches. Recorded 129 receptions, just over 1,300 yards and 6 touchdowns during his college career. And he was a terrific safety blanket for Garrett Nussmeier in the LSU offense. Mm-hmm. And he's got the plus athleticism to work best in space or in the slot. A lot of similarities that I see in terms of how he was utilized and what's best for his game, much like Colston Loveland is. But LSU at times had him lined up as an H-back and come out of the backfield, just like it was with Terrance Ferguson as well. And he would come out of the backfield and be making positive gains off of dump-off passes. 68% of Mason Taylor's catches went for first downs during his college career. The dude is a machine. Now, like other tight ends we've talked about it in this class, blocking is an issue, doesn't set the edge very well, and can get pushed around at times. So he's going to need to put on a little bit more size at the next level to become a little bit more of a well-rounded tight end.
Insert Ben Herbert.
Yes. I'm sure he'll take care of that. But if you're talking about adding a reliable receiving threat to this tight end room to pair with Conklin as your 1 and 2 receiving options for tight end, and a great option for Justin Herbert when it comes to what do you need? Do you need 3 yards on a first down? Sure. Do you need 10 yards? Okay, he's going to come in and get you 11. That's the reliable Mason Taylor. And I think he would be a great addition and a great help to Justin Herbert for this offense.
Yeah, I really like Mason Taylor too. We're aligned 1, 2, 3. Mason Taylor number 3 for me. I feel like he's kind of gotten a bad rap by some for his blocking, which I don't think it's that bad.
That's fine, but
like that's also not what
the Chargers don't need him to block.
Yeah, like judge a fish by how well he can climb a tree. Like, yeah, he's gonna be a pretty bad fish, right? That's not how it works. Mason Taylor has so much that this Chargers team needs, right? First off, prototypical size, 6'5", 250, welcomes physicality. You mentioned the hands, excellent hands, nimble feet. I think he brings that explosiveness and that burst, right? Always looking to turn up field as soon as he catches the ball, which I love about him, looking to finish. I like his route tree. I think he has pretty damn soft hands. I feel you on maybe the best hands in this class. LSU record on receptions this past season for a tight end, 55, 8.6 ADOT, which some might say, well, yeah, there's some that are better, but he played in line 45% of the time. So, like, think about being next to the tackles. Like, he's there and still getting that ADOT of 8.6. So that's pretty high for what he does. Excellent out of the break, especially at the top of routes as well. Again, I think he could use some work as a blocker. I'm not saying he's a great blocker, but I think he needs more technique, not as many gears. So we talk about like explosiveness and athleticism in terms of like getting to that third gear, right? Where he blows people. That's not him. No. But like his second gear cruise control is pretty dang good. And that's what I like about him a lot. Slippery enough to get to that second gear consistently. Second lowest drop percentage in the entire nation for tight end, with just 1.8. Again, for me, this is like one of those tons of upside, high floor. Give him the right coaching, the right strength and conditioning, the right quarterback, and you're going to see this dude cook. I like Mason Taylor a ton. And if for whatever reason the Chargers can't get one of the two, which I almost didn't even look at number 1 for me, Jake, because I was like, there's no point. This is pointless. They're not going to go up together. If they can't get Loveland, like Mason Taylor is a dude where if they trade back a little bit, or hell, trade up from round 2, depending on what they go in round 1, absolutely. I don't think he'll be there at 55. I think they're going to have to do something in order to get him if they don't get him at 22. I really like Mason Taylor. I think he's perfect for this Chargers team and what they need. Now, I think I honestly thought about Jake, like when going in Tyler, and I'll be honest with you, I took down 0 notes for Tyler Warren. Because like I started watching, I'm like, God damn it. No, I'm not going to let myself look at this, right? Because there's not a chance in hell.
Dan's going to be like, we need to trade up for Tyler Warren. He's going to set a fire under everybody else to do that. I mean, obviously, who wouldn't want
I would Tyler understand if they did trade up for Tyler Warren. Because like he's just an absolute machine. Like he reminds you of the Terminator, where like he just doesn't go down. He's consistently running and he just won't stop, right? Like,
yeah, he just had to blow up in the 2024 season, which in turn blew up the chances at the Chargers getting an opportunity to take him.
So like I'm not really going to talk about him much because like there's just no chance, right? It's like talking about Travis Hunter, right? Just okay. Yeah, he's great, awesome, blue chip, cool. We're not going to get him. I've said this for weeks though. I do think that there is a pretty good chance that Colston Loveland falls to 22. And I think what's important here as we go through kind of these, let's just stick with Colston Loveland here for a second. Obviously, there's so much to love about Colston Loveland's game. And, you know, the alignment with him and this coaching staff and the Michigan ties and all the traits and physicality and all of the athleticism that he brings and just that juice, the downfield, like all of that stuff, right? I think that's all important. But you would say, oh, well, what about all the other teams? There's no way he's going to fall. He's too good. He's not going to fall to 22. And he might not. There's a lot of teams out there that have a lot of needs, including some at tight end. Now, some of those needs have been filled, right? I think Denver was one of those teams where like, oh shit, they can go get Colston Loveland. They go get Evan Ingram. Could they still go get Colston Loveland?
Yes,
Maybe.
they could.
They could. I don't know if they would, though. I don't know if they would. There's a lot of really good players in this draft, in any draft. Tight end is a position that falls almost consistently. It's just like running back. It's just like safety. And especially with a class where you can get a bunch of tight ends, I can see a team saying, I can get a good one in day 2. And I am almost in that position where I'd be like, I don't know if I would take. Every day I wake up, Jake, one day I say, I'm not going tight end in round 1. Next day, absolutely. Give me Colston Loveland at 22. Like, I'm torn because I think that underbelly, the second tier and third tier, is pretty good for what this Chargers team needs specifically. But damn it, Colston Loveland, 6'6", 250, right? Ideal size, can go up and get it with the best of them. That's not really his game, but I think he can do it. He has so much wiggle, man. Like, he is such an elite separator. Route running, I think he has at a premium. Smooth athlete. He has so much nuance to his game. He sets up defenders. Played out wide almost 20% of his snaps, which is second in this class, only behind Fannin. He's definitely more of like a wide receiver pass catcher mismatch. Sign me up. You know, not as well-rounded in terms of like that blocking side. F it. Don't care. His receiving talent, just pure receiving talent, I'll put up against any receiver or tight end in this class, bar none. An athletic weapon, size, athleticism, downfield option for Justin Herbert, and an offensive weapon that this Chargers team has been asking for and this fan base has asking for years.
Yeah.
I think this is better than Hunter Henry. Like, we're getting Gates than him, in my opinion, in terms of what he can bring to an offense. Hunter Henry was definitely more well-rounded than Colston Loveland, but the ceiling for the pass catching and juice for Colston Loveland, Jake, is just like off the charts. And I get it. I get why people are so hoping that they can get Colston Loveland. I'd be, when Colston Loveland goes ahead of them, I'll be kind of devastated. But I also would be kind of like, all right, whew. Now I can at least like start looking for value at the position. And I don't know if you can get, like, it's hard to reach the value for a tight end at 22, right? Like, think about just like roster construction, how much salary that is, first round pick. Like, that's hard to do. Can you do it? Sure. But I think that's a pretty good bet with Colston Loveland.
There's a reason why Colston Loveland has probably been the most talked about player on the show for the last month and a half, 2 months, however you want to put it. Everything just aligns as why this pick makes sense for the Chargers. Dan already mentioned the size, rare combo size of speed and athleticism that he brings to the table. There was also a reason why Harbaugh called Colston Loveland once upon a time the next Travis Kelce. Dan, he's got an 88% open catch target rate.
That's like Keenan Allen numbers.
He just knows how to get open easily, find the patch of green in a defense, and get there. And he's able to make plays. And you mentioned the wiggle in terms of making people miss, making big plays out of it. That is a dynamic weapon that you can add to this offense that has not been here since Hunter Henry. Mm-hmm. Now, yes, below average when it comes to his run block ability, doesn't have the best when it comes to the numbers that you like to see against bigger body tight ends that have contested catch radius, but who the hell cares? He doesn't need it when he's that wide open. When there's nobody around him for 10 feet in any direction, he doesn't need to go up against anybody.
Nope.
Colston Loveland is a dynamic playmaker that myself, Dan, and any Chargers fan out there is going to pray to the gods that he is still available at 22.
No one's going to be upset with that pick. Nobody.
I would be shocked for anybody that would, even with whoever may still be up there. Again, as we have mentioned, how this roster for the Chargers has been constructed up until this point, you are literally in BPA mode.
Yep.
And holy shit, would Harbaugh want to have Loveland on this team? It'd be a great addition. It would be true to their message in talking about where he and Joe Ortiz had failed in terms of getting Justin Herbert more weapons and doing a good service by him at this point in his career. Colston Loveland with Ladd McConkey. Yeah. You could do something with that for sure.
Yeah, and the folks that were peeved that they didn't go receiver at free agency, didn't bring back up the Brinks truck for all those, DK Metcalfs or Devontaes or Cooper Kupps or, whoever. Like, this is a pretty damn good replacement / consolation prize / probably better long-term than those guys. And arguably better fit as well. Now, the draft value, folks, you can't draft tight end at round 1. I get it. Especially like when you get to, top 5, top 10, right? Like it's hard to reach that roster construction, like salary perspective, right? That's a lot of money to shell up for the position. But if you told me like, hey, you can get Brock Bowers at that cost and he's going to give you, oh, by the way, like rookie records and everything, like you do it, right? It's just the risk if they don't. And at 22, like that's a different animal than at 5, like last year, right? I'm back on the train. 22, give me Colston Loveland. I'm back.
Tomorrow it could be different, but today, Dan Wolkenstein is on Colston Loveland at 22 for the Chargers.
And I think where I'm at with this, I think as we've been talking about this class, Jake, is I'm not going to freak out as much. And I think this is where I land. I love Colston Loveland, right? Dream pick at 22. He's one of those, like, probably in the top 3 or 4, like, oh, please, if he falls, I'll take him. But because of the guys at 3, 4, 5, 6 for me, it's going to be one of those where it's like, damn, like, they've got a lot of choices. And if they're not getting Colston Loveland, they're getting an effing great player because someone else fell. So if Colston Loveland's not there, right? Who is there? Like, does that mean that one of those top corners, one of those top edge rushers fell? One of those top interior defensive linemen fell? Maybe. Like, the tight end position sets up nicely for what this Chargers team needs and allows them to go BPA, and there's a lot of dudes there that fit what they want. Jake, I'm telling you right now, I'm not talking anymore about Tyler Warren. I'm not.
I'll take the wheel here, Dan.
Enjoy.
I
can't do it. My emotions, I'm not even going to let myself get into that.
First of all, I understand why, because we have had people that have joined our live shows over the last couple of weeks that have been absolutely pigeonholed that it's Tyler Warren or it's no tight end at all. And we've said, really? It's like no tight end at all. It's like, I understand the beast that is Tyler Warren. But there's a good chance that he may not even fall out of the top 10 people. I know
He will not fall out top 10.
Most mock drafts have him going to Indianapolis, and that makes perfect sense. But there is a very good chance that I don't think that he makes it out of the top 10 for how good he is.
For the Colston Loveland fans, though, I will say you probably want him to fall out of the top 10 because that gives you more of a chance for Colston Loveland.
If he goes earlier, there's trouble in Loveland land. But Dan, for Tyler Warren, I call him Mr. DIA, and I'm sure other people have it too, Mr. Do-It-All. 104 catches, just over 1,200 yards, and 8 touchdowns. High-level athlete, Dan. He played basketball, baseball, and football in high school. Versatile. Can line up anywhere as a runner, receiver, and even a thrower of the football. His game against USC was probably like the showcase of all of that for him. And that got everybody really on the Tyler Warren hype train. But it just kept going up and up and up and up and up from there. There was really no downfall which of course impacts us and his draft stock.
I think he sucks.
Great for him.
I
think he's got maybe some people should give him some more medical outlooks and knock his draft stock a little bit. Yeah, for sure.
Where's the bong picture when you need it?
Dan, he had a ridiculous back shoulder catch against Ohio State. He's just strong, physical in his play, lowers the shoulder against defenders. He's going to run them over if they get in his way. He was third in contested catches with 13, second in missed tackles among tight ends with 19. That is mutant status when you consider his size that he comes in.
Yep.
To have that type of production, that type of versatility, there is no question why Tyler Warren is the number one tight end in this class. The only questions that we have are, why didn't the Chargers tank in the 2024 season so they could be in a better position to get him, right?
Pretty much.
Yes.
Pretty much.
All that winning and getting back to the playoffs took them right out of contention. Sons of bitches.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk about Tyler Warren. I'm really not. At the beginning, I talked about the top. Like, you look for this Chargers team needs like elite traits, right? It needs someone who's like, an elite pass catcher, or maybe like an elite has elite hands, or maybe like an elite contested catcher, or yards per route run elite. Like, F it. This guy's got elite everything, right? He's just breaking charts all over the place. And I get why he's going to be a top 10 selection. I think Chargers fans are just, sucking hopium at this point if they think they're going to get Tyler Warren.
I like that.
They're not doing it. And you missed an opportunity when you said like there's the I forget what you said about like there's a lot of love or a lot of hope for Loveland, or your hopes for love, whatever it was, Loveland. There's
yes,
you missed it. So this is a long one,
but a fun one.
And we're not. I'm.
Do not split it up.
Do you think that they go? If Loveland is there at 22, like, it would be so hard. It would be so, like, I don't know who they would have above him. Like, realistically, honestly, like at 22, who can you see them drafting ahead of him?
For those who aren't watching on YouTube, I haven't stopped nodding since Dan began that sentence about 20 seconds ago. The answer is yes. And this is where I have gone back and forth as it relates to what the Chargers would do at tight end. And this is obviously a big discussion for an option for them. But if it's not tight end, I still think you're going interior defensive line here. If it's not Colston Loveland at 22.
Or edge.
Depending on who's there. But in terms of just getting a blue chip player, and you have to remember how this roster has been constructed to go BPA, I think those are the two positions that they're really going to target at 22. And the ones that have the most realistic possibilities in terms of great additions and things that you need that you don't currently have on your roster that are going to elevate that position. And that's why I keep coming back to those two between tight end and interior defensive line for the Chargers at 22. And Dan said that this one was a long one. When we eventually get into the interior defensive line class, buckle up. Holy shit, you're going to be in here for the long haul. Might want to bring some, provisions, some snacks, your favorite drink with you, because you're going to be listening for a while on that pod for sure. But this was our top tight end or our top 10 as it relates to the tight end class. You ask us tomorrow, some aspects of this may change. They may stay the same between now and then. Hope you guys didn't flame us too hard for where we had some ranked, especially from 6 to 10. But for having some fun as it relates to just general football banter, put your top 10 in the comments for this episode. Let's talk football. Let's understand each other's reasonings, because this is what's fun about the NFL draft. This is what's fun about the evaluation process. And this is what makes it exciting come April 24th. Dan, long or not, this was fun. I was looking forward to getting this top 10 out.
Needed this. And going kind of fast forwarding to the draft, I'm curious to see if when Colston Loveland makes it past 14, that's when the trade up questions start happening. If you can get past the Colts at 14, then you look at teams, I think, possibly Denver at 20, possibly Tampa Bay at 19. Cincy could pop. I doubt Cincy goes up, but hey, maybe they just go scorched earth and don't care about the defense. They just go offense and just hope they can score 100 points a game.
And don't knock a possibility of someone trading up to leapfrog the Chargers.
Exactly.
To try to select him.
So in that 15 to 20 range is prime trade up for Loveland season. I would not be surprised at all if they do some level of trade up, if they feel that they can't get something done at 22 for him. Look at those 6-round picks. Look at those possibilities of doing kind of that pick swap that they did last year for Lad McConkey. Oh, Colston Loveland would be so nice. I think my favorites of like where they can get them, Colston Loveland at 22 would be sick. I think Mason Taylor at the trade up would be great. Terrance Ferguson at 55 would be awesome. I would love Terrance Ferguson at 55. Otherwise, I think Mitchell Evans, day 3 guy, Briningstool, day 3 guy, Orande Gadsden, like all of these are kind of like the ones that I would love for this Chargers team. We went through a ton here, Jake. Anything else before we take a breath, drink some water, touch grass?
Did you get that one into your system? Because be ready for more top 10. I keep wanting to say for top tight end. No, it's top 10. Get ready for more top 10 lists that are going to be on the way. Because first one is in the books as it relates to the 2025 NFL draft. Best believe the rest are going to be very interesting. I actually had picked tight end for this episode because I told Dan, it should be pretty easy as it relates to putting it together. But beyond number 5, it actually was much more difficult than I thought it was going to be. But I'm hoping that this sheds a little bit of light that this tight end class is not just 2 names at the top.
It's not.
There is a lot of talent for what the Chargers specifically need to round out their tight end room right now. There is a lot of talent to be found beyond the top 2 names in this list.
And remember the disclaimer. This is top 10 best fits for the Chargers. So I'm already going to have just like a template response for everyone who's like, I can't believe you got ranked so. Stop. This was fun. And be on the lookout, folks. We've got some special guests. And these top 10 rankings are going to start coming through pretty quickly because we're coming up to the draft. We purposefully kind of waited till the end to have as much information as we can, to where in that month prior to the draft, when everyone's just thinking draft selection, we have what we need to provide you with the best fits. And that is unique because you see a lot of top 10s everywhere. That's not what we're doing here. We are very niche for this Chargers team. And I hope this helps. Let us know in the comments, to Jake's point. Who are your top 10? Who's your sleeper? Who's the guy you want the most? Who's the one that you want to see this Chargers team draft over anyone else, regardless of position, regardless of the round, regardless of day? That's your guy. Let us know in the chat. Jake, excited for this one. Can't wait to get into the next position. Are you ready to say what the next position is yet? I will let you do the honors. If you want to call it out. I don't know what it is. We haven't even talked about it.
I'm a fiend for surprises.
Okay.
So
no,
I'm going to keep it. I'm not saying shit.
Okay. Sounds good.
Honestly, I haven't decided yet. So that's one of the reasons why there is some secrecy.
Me neither. But either way, you're hoping this Chargers team can get out of the NFL draft with one of these dudes, because if so, they are cooking and they can make something work from a pass catching perspective with any of these 10. But Jake, for you, who people can find at Jake D. Hefner on X, find me at Dan W. Sports. Enjoy your weekend. You may or may not be doing a live show. Not sure. Stay tuned. But until then, enjoy whatever it is you're drinking between now and Monday, because it's the weekend, folks. Enjoy your time. And we'll talk to you next time on Chargers Unleashed. All to the Jake. I want to put this sound one more time because we deserve it. Because we've been out here for so long. Okay. Enjoy your weekend, everybody. Bye.